Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need in Israel to succeed, whether that's reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language and country of origin, but in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always write us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il. You can also write to us in the chat if you're joining us live on Zoom with any questions, comments, concerns, or requests you might have. We'll review the transcript after class. You can also see all of our previous lessons on youtube.com. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh. The very first result will be a truncated playlist of all of our previous lessons. Click on it. I think we're now up to 125 lessons with close to 20,000 views. Plenty of content to review. You can also drop us a comment there. We would love to hear from you any way possible. Most importantly, because these classes are powered by you. Whether you are thinking about making Aliyah, you've already made Aliyah, you're just interested in learning Hebrew, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like to cover to make Hebrew as practical as possible. With that, we'll get started with today's class, and this is also the first class of our fall session. We're always excited to not only have returnees come join us, but also new participants. So if you're new, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. We are going to start off this season rather with a request we had from you, because again, we really do want to hear from you to make sure our classes are as practical and as applicable as possible. We had a review, as someone asking us to talk about public transportation in Israel, how it works, the different modes, how to pay, and so forth, which is what we're going to do today. As always, if you're joining us live, you can write to me with any questions you have about the class we're covering in the Q&A. Everything that's not related to today's class, please keep to the chat and please keep the personal conversation to a minimum. At the top of the hour, I'll stop and ask break for questions from the Q&A, and then I'll tell you about next week's class, as well as a reminder, those of you who've forgotten, that this Wednesday is the resumption of our Cafe Oleh Conversations classes, which are live but off the record and not taped. That will be Wednesday at 8 p.m. Israel time, and you'll be able to practice the Hebrew we learn in our classes here, and we'll talk about the lesson for this week as well. It's a great opportunity, regardless of what level you're at, to practice speaking and comprehending Hebrew spoken by fellow learners. So with that, let's get started today. So as I said, we're going to talk about public transportation. That was the request today. And we're more than happy to do that because public transportation is not just what many people in Israel use. It can be a little daunting also because, as we've seen in the past few years, basically the last few governments have changed the way it not only runs, but also functions, and the costs for it have changed dramatically in the last few years. So it's always good to do a review, not just of what options you have, but also the basics of not only how much does it cost, but how do you pay? So let's get started. As always, Hebrew is in the middle with the dots and bars we call in Hebrew nikud that indicate vowel sounds. Transliteration on the right for a more American English-friendly audience. English on the left, any notes in gender, issues with gender and notes in general on the left, but we go through each word. So either sit back and watch and enjoy, take notes, old school pen and paper, screenshots. Remember, you'll be getting a copy of this video and the spreadsheet in the next day or two by email, as well as on YouTube. So let's start. The word for transportation. The word for transportation in Hebrew is tachbura. It comes from the root chet bet resh. Remember here, we talk a lot about the shoresh, or the root of every Hebrew word, which gives as much meaning as does the vowels and the helper letters that go in and around that shoresh to give it even further meaning. In this case, the root chet bet resh is related to the words, for example, chibur, or chibur, or chibur, however you say the letter resh, which means connection. Lechaber is to connect. Lehitchaber, to get connected. Tachbua is the thing that connects you either from one place to another, from one person to another, whatever it may be. Modern Hebrew, the word for transportation, tachbua. And obviously, like in English, tachbua is encompassing everything from tachbua pratit, private transportation, which is not what we're talking about today, to tachbua tziburit, which is how we say public transportation in Hebrew, because the word tachbua is feminine. Therefore, any adjectives, any modifiers to go with it also has to be. With that, first, let's start off with the word public. The word public in Hebrew is tzibur, 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 tzibur. Talk about that, resh, however you say it. This is the word for public. That's the noun. The adjective, and we've done this in previous lessons, and another shout out to look at our previous lessons on YouTube, is how to create an adjective out of a noun. You simply add a yod at the end. It's as simple as that, tziburi. Tziburi is public as in an adjective. Okay, so if I want to say public transportation, the word in Hebrew is tachbua, like I said, because it's feminine. The adjective that goes with it also has to be feminine. So tziburi becomes tziburit, the taf at the end. Okay, so public transportation, tachbura tziburit. Okay, that is in comparison to, I talked about tachbura pratit, private transportation, and another one, which is relatively new. Some people like it, many people don't. Full disclosure, I really don't like it. It's called tachbura shitufit. Shitufit comes from the root shin taf pei, that has to do with sharing. Lishatef is to share something, whether it's a story or a link or anything like that. Lehishtatif is to participate. Shitufit, however, means shared. And so when we talk in Hebrew and in Israel about tachbura shitufit, we're talking about shared transportation, meaning that the vehicle you use is shared. So that could be anything, not just from a car rental, but more specifically, bikes and scooters. Right? So whether you're in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, anywhere else in the country that has tachbura shitufit, shared transportation, this is how we're going to say it in Hebrew. Let's talk, though, about public transportation. That was the prompt for today's class. That's what we want to focus on. So, first off, the easiest one there is, autobus. Autobus is an autobus or simply a bus. This is the most popular one. This is the most widespread one. Anyone who's been in Israel has noticed buses either from regular city buses to big charter buses going throughout the country. Standard word, there's no if there has been a invention by the Academy for Hebrew Language, which is the official body tasked with standardizing modern Hebrew. Whatever word they originally came up for bus in Hebrew has never caught on, hence autobus, or simply bus, as you'll see in a little bit. A taxi, which we're still going to put under public transportation, even though it technically isn't by most people's standards, is a monit. Monit, the word for taxi cab, comes from the important part inside a taxi cab, not the car itself, but rather the monnaie, the meter inside of the vehicle. So the monit is the thing that has the monnaie inside it, i.e. taxi cab. Another thing that's unique to Israel is actually other countries around the world is a monit sherut. The best way we translate this is a shared cab or shared taxi. These are mini buses that drive around major cities or in between major cities that usually seat up to 10 people. You usually can only pay by cash. Some now take the Rav-Kav, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And they often run not only throughout the night, so 24 hours, they often also run on Shabbat and holidays. So this can also be an alternative to public transportation, to a bus, an autobus. However, a monit sherut usually only starts up when it's full or at near capacity. So it's not at fixed times when it departs and enters stations. So that's also important. Rakevet, over the years, Rakevet Israel Railways has gotten more and more sophisticated and more developed. They're opening even more lines as I talk. This is also a very popular way to travel in between cities, Rakevet. Okay. In addition to harakevet, the train, we also have harakevet hakala in several cities. Harakevet hakala, if rakevet is train, kal is an adjective. It normally means easy. It can also mean light. In this case, light rail. Rakevet kala is the light rail, whether you're in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, or in Gush Dan, which we've talked about before, meaning the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, the newish, now a year plus old Rakevet Kala that goes through Bat Yam, Tel Aviv, Bnei Brak, Ramat Gan, Petah Tikva, and soon to be even more cities in the center of the country, is a real game changer for many people. Okay. One city, however, has 3 of its own types of public transportation that are totally unique to it and no other city, at least as of now. And that city is Haifa. Haifa has always been, I'm not going to call it an outlier, I'm going to call it special. It's out on a jut of land going into the water with Mount Carmel at the top, Har Carmel, and Miflatz Haifa, the Bay of Haifa at the bottom. As a result, it's all perched on a slope, and it's thought of as rings. There's the lower city and the upper city and various parts in the middle. As a result, it has some unique characteristics that necessitate its own unique transportation models, also because its population is very diverse. It has a significant population of both Jews and non-Jews, thus meaning, for example, in Israel, the law is that public transportation is not running on Shabbat, except in specific areas with significant non-Jewish populations, like Haifa. As a result, Haifa has some unique things. One of them is called the Rakavlit, excuse me. I had to look up how to pronounce this, because again, this is something unique to Haifa. I live in Tel Aviv. It's not something you normally encounter, but the Rakavlit is the gondola lift. If you've been to Metzada or anywhere else where there's a Rachbal in Israel, you've already probably heard the word Rachbal, which means that type of aerial lift, like a gondola. But the one specific to Haifa is called the Rakavlit. Okay, and this is going to be important when we talk about fees in a little bit. So if that's esoteric, it won't be in a little bit. The other one that's really important to Haifa is the metronit. The metronit takes the word metro, like metro, metropolitan, and that same ending it. And this is Haifa's bus rapid transit. If that's a new term for you, especially my fellow Americans who don't necessarily use, much less have public transportation near them, bus rapid transit simply means lanes that are only devoted to buses and that run in a very specific route and a very constant frequency. As opposed to a regular bus, which often uses the same lanes as cars and other vehicles, a bus rapid transit only has lanes devoted to itself, and it runs much more regularly. And if you go on the Metronit, you'll see that they're long articulated buses, meaning that they have multiple cabins, and they run very frequently, and usually around the lower part of Haifa, closer to the bay. And then finally, to round out Haifa's unique transportation system, we have the Carmelit. The Carmelit was the first underground subway. It's not really a subway, but it's called as such in the Middle East, even though we still don't have a proper Middle East a proper subway in Israel. The Carmelit is a funicular rail. It runs underground from the bottom of Haifa all the way to the top. It's a great ride. Some people will take it just to take the ride for it because we don't really have anything like that until the light rail opened in Tel Aviv, particularly the underground stations. So it's a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to go on. It's really unique. Okay. With that, we also have 2 relatively new additions to Israel's public transportation that are also very important. One is called Sababus, and the other is called Na'im Besofash. Both of these were opened up not by the National Ministry of Transportation, because remember, Israel has national government and has local government. National government is, for example, Misrad HaTachbora, the Ministry of Tachbora, Transportation. But municipalities also have their own budgets, and they have a lot of control over what happens on a local level. And for many years, many of the cities in the center of the country that have significant non-religiously observant populations said, well, wait a minute. Why should someone who needs to go to the hospital to visit someone sick or just wants to go to the beach on their only day off during the week, why should they be penalized because they can't afford a car or they don't have access to a car? Why should they not do it? And by the way, why should members of Knesset, regardless of their own observance level, be able to ride on Shabbat and on holidays, but the public can't, much less have access to a car? So there are a lot of infighting, and there still is a little bit of infighting. There are two lines that very much complement each other. The first one that was opened was called Sababus. It was created a few years ago by the municipality of Ramat Gan, the next major city sitting next to Tel Aviv. And Sababus comes from the word sababa, slang for great, and bus, autobus, right? You put them together, Sababus. These are lines that run through Ramat Gan, going east towards Petach Tikva, west into Tel Aviv, south into Holon, I think even north into Herzliya and other places. And Sababus, the point of Sababus is not only that it's free, is that it runs on Shabbat and holidays. So if you want to go out, whether that's during the day or at night on Shabbat or on a holiday, except for Yom Kippur, you can take Sababus and it's free. It's free as a loophole around the status quo. The status quo is a series of norms, for lack of a better term. They aren't laws, but they're norms that dictate what can and cannot be done in certain places. One includes public transportation and work in general on Shabbat. That it's free and it's subsidized by the local municipality is the loophole to the national government saying no public transportation on Shabbat, i.e. we're not going to pay for it. If you want to do that on the local level, you can do it. So Sababus has been running for a while. It's great. I'm actually going to show you the map of it, and we're going to send you the link for the map so you also see it. Let me open that up right here. Share screen. Where to go? I had it open here. Show all windows. There we go. This is Sababus. This is one of the two systems, right? You see Ramat Gan right here. It's all this area right here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. They're done by colors, right? So when you go to look it up on the map, and we'll talk about this map as well as the apps to find out the times for these. There's 4 lines: the green, the red, the white, the blue, as you see, and it gives you where they go, which direction. So you see they start in Ramat Gan and they go all over the place through Ramat Gan, ending from Bar Ilan on one side to as far east as Bar Ilan, to the Ayalon Mall in the north, Namal Tel Aviv, the Tel Aviv port on the west, and all the way south to the very bottom of Yaffo. Okay, so it's pretty popular, especially if you're coming from Ramat Gan and going to any of these places. But the one we're going to focus on right now, or at least for the next few minutes, is called Na'im Besofash. Na'im Besofash was as much the rival to Sababus as it is the bigger one. It's the bigger one because many more municipalities joined on it, whereas Sababus is just funded by Ramat Gan and passes through other municipalities. Na'im Besofash was founded in joint by a whole bunch of them. First off, to rival Ramat Gan, because we have that superiority complex here in Tel Aviv municipality, as well as all the other ones you see here. So Givatayim, Hulon, Bat Yam, Kiryat Ono, Ramat HaSharon, Kfar Saba, Hod HaSharon, and so forth. And so you see this is a much more extensive line. This line doesn't just stay in the center of the country, it goes as far east as Mevaseret Zion, right? The next town before you get to the entrance to Jerusalem. It goes into Nes Ziona, Modi'in, Shoham. It's very extensive. Okay, and just like the other ones, this runs on Shabbat and on holidays. It also runs late nights. So this is also a really good service. And again, it's completely free as opposed to the regular buses that run during the week. This is completely free. I'm going to show you how to look up the times. Okay, and we're obviously going to give you a link to this map so you can see it. It has English as well, Arabic for those of you it's relevant to. Okay, so it's a great service. Having taken it multiple times late at night, it's a really comprehensive service. It's a big charter bus as opposed to a regular city bus. So it does have some differences to it. Okay. But with that, let's get back to our vocabulary because we should also talk about where the term na'im besofash comes from. Just like sababus is a play on words of sababa and bus, na'im besofash is actually a really clever play on words. Many things in Israel have that great wordplay. This is one of them. Na'im as an adjective means pleasant. And the expression sofash na'im, sofash stands for sofa shavua. Sofash na'im is the, how shall we say, equivalent of Shabbat Shalom. Instead of wishing someone Shabbat Shalom, we've talked about this multiple times. If you don't know if someone is observant or not, you can say sofash na'im, have a pleasant weekend, have a nice weekend, okay? Na'im, however, is also the way you spell in the present tense plural the verb lanua. Lanua means to move. So it's not just a flip of the expression sofash na'im, na'im besofash. It also means traveling or moving on the weekend, right? Because this is the system, the bus network that runs on the weekend. Very clever word. It's a very popular form of transportation. Okay. With that, let's get to some verbs, some words, and some expressions you need to know. First off, to travel. This is a really important difference. In Hebrew, you all have learned, or you will learn the verb lalechet, which I did not include here on purpose. Lalechet means to go, but it specifically means to go a short distance. Okay? It's only a short distance. Linsoa, however, is a long distance. And linsoa can also mean to go, but it only refers to a long distance. So for example, when you want to wish someone a pleasant journey, you say nesia tova, right? Meaning they're going on a journey, whether it's by train or plane or even driving. It's a long distance. Linsoa is only about going a long distance. You can also translate it as to travel, and I will here, but most important, it can mean to go, but only a long distance. When we're talking about a bus, an autobus, a train, rakevet, the light rail, rakevet kala, or any of those fun systems in Haifa, when you get on or get off any of those vehicles, we use specific words. And these words you probably know in another context. The first is la'alot. La'alot means, obviously, to make aliyah. It means to ascend, but it also means to board. So if you're boarding a plane and you're in Natbag, if you're in the airport here in Israel, and you'll hear aliyah lamatos, it means boarding the flight. The flight is boarding. Okay? La'alot la'otobus, boarding a bus. La'alot la'rakevet, boarding the train, and so forth. The opposite is laredet. Laredet means to go down. The fancy word that you'll often see a lot on Israeli signs, some of it's been changed, but it's still a fancy word, and you'll hear this in other countries as well, is to alight. To alight simply means to get off a vehicle, right? So you'll see on a lot of signs, especially bus signs, or if you're looking on an app or online, where you can get on and off a bus. If you zoom down here to row 24, it'll often say horada bilvad, a light only, meaning you can't board that bus at that station. You can only get off the bus at that station. Okay, so la'alot, to board, la'redet, to alight, to get off the vehicle. Very important one, and we're going to talk about this again when we get to ticketing in a minute, is litakif. Litakif is to validate. Okay, this is very important when you are going, whether it's on a bus or train or anything like that. Okay, is litakef, to validate. You have to validate your ticket, you have to validate your pass, whatever it is, because remember, not everywhere as a human checking your ticket. And in fact, one of the major reforms of the public transportation system in Israel is that a bus driver is no longer able to accept cash on the bus, or he is, with only a very few exceptions, supposed to take cash from passengers. Everyone is expected to either use an app or a prepaid ticket, and to validate it, litakef, when you board the bus or the train or the light rail, whatever it may be. Okay, so litakef is going to be very important. Lahatin. Lahatin means to top up, as in to add fare. So if you have a Ravkav, that lime and purple pass card, sometimes you're going to need to top it up with money in order to pay. Or any other system that you use to pay, the verb is lahatin, to top up, to add more value. Okay. The other one that's equally important is lisrok, to scan, whether it's a printed ticket or a QR code that on an app that you use to pay for your travel. You're often going to need to lisrok, to scan the code, the barcode, in order to litakef your ticket. Okay, lisrok kedei litakef, scanning in order to validate. A light only we just talked about. Now let's get into some methods of payment, very important in Israel. So since the reforms that have been in place for a couple years now, these are older than the most recent ones, we have what's known as the Rav-Kav. Rav-Kav comes from the word Rav, many, and Kav, line, meaning a bus line or a train line. And the idea is that this card was revolutionary in Israel in that you could pay for any form of public transportation with the Rav-Kav. It was revolutionary then, a sort of duh moment for many people to be like, why didn't this exist up till now? Because it used to be you had to pay, even if you bought a multi-pass card on one line, you had to pay on a different card with another one because there were different companies going to different places. That's all changed. Everything can be streamlined through the Rav-Kav, which is great. The difference, though, however, is that there are new versions of how to pay. The Rav-Kav is a physical card. You can top it up both in person at various stations throughout Israel, and they're often on maps, or you can download the Rav-Kav app, which also works in English. Tap your card to the phone. Your smartphone only works on smartphones, obviously, because it needs an app, and you can top it up by doing that. What it has is something called extra value, erech tzavul, where you can just have money on the card, and that pays for one-off travel, which we'll talk about in a minute. Rav-Kav also has the opportunity to buy multi-passes. Now in Israel, we'll talk about multi-passes in a second. The difference though with Rav-Kav is you have to purchase the Rav-Kav, the multi-pass, before you travel. And this is really important for those of you who, for example, are traveling between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv in one day, which means not just the bus or the train between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, but also the buses to get to those stations. And within those cities, you can get a day pass, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, which is a significant discount on all those individual trips. It bundles them into one price, and you have 24 hours that you can travel, which is great. But on a Rav-Kav, on the physical card, you have to buy that pass before you start traveling. You can't do it after the fact, and it's not calculated after the fact. It's only the money that you put on it is what you travel on. Okay, that is in comparison to 4 applications, and I put their English names here so you can look them up on Apple or Google stores. Move It, Hop on, RavPass. Move It and Hop on RavPass are great because not only do they give you a map and you can calculate your travel plan. So you can put in your origin and your destination like you would on Google Maps or any other map system. And it will not only tell you how long it'll take, it'll tell you which bus lines to take and so forth. It will calculate the fee for you. And all you have to do is with your account, set up a payment system. So put in a credit card and it will automatically tabulate for you the best deal. So for example, if you travel enough within Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to warrant a discount, to warrant that day pass. It'll automatically do it for you. You don't have to think about anything. You get a bill once a month, and you'll see tabulated in the bill, the discount is already there. So it's great to already use this because everything's already taken care of for you. It automatically tabulates discounts for you. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to pre-plan. You just go. Okay. The other two apps that allow you to pay public transportation are Pango and Celo. Pango and Celo are great because they're also parking apps. In addition to using public transportation, if you need to park in Israel and you need to buy a parking ticket, Pango and Celo are your friends. That's an even more comprehensive system. Okay. And then finally, when we're talking about payment systems, a very important one. In Israel, there are all sorts of hanachot, discounts for various populations in Israel. For example, children and youth, people who live in very distant areas, people who serve in the military or are recently released, but mostly for handicapped and senior citizens, elderly and senior citizens, I should say. If you are up to, I think it's 62 for men and 65 for women, but it's on the website. I'll look it up and tell you specifically. You get 50% off all public transportation rides. And if you're 75 and older, you get absolutely free rides on public transportation. It's called Zahav Kav. Basically, when you set up either your physical Rav Kav or one of the 4 apps, you have to put in your age and have it verified. And then whenever you use that card, it's free, it's covered because you've proven that you have that discount. It's a really important one if you fall into those categories. So basically I think it's from 62 to 62 to 75 for women and 65 to 75 for men. Don't hold me to that. I'll send you the correct information. You get 50% off so long as you put in the right information in your personal profile on the RavCav or the 4 apps. One of the 4 apps, 75 plus free rides. What am I keep talking about these these discounts and things like that? So let's talk about it. RavCav, still to this day, talks about a chozeh. A chozeh is, for example, if you take the bus every day from your home to work, whether that's in the same city you live in or to another city, you can buy a chozeh, a contract. It literally means a contract, and that allows you to save money in between places, especially if you go on the same line multiple times. What does that contract look like? As opposed to a nisia bodedet or nisia chad pamit, a one-time ride, we'll come back to that in a second, you can buy what's called a chofshi yomi. Chofshi means free, yomi, daily, from the word yom. Remember we talked about how to make adjectives out of nouns? Yom is a day, yomi is daily. Okay, the adjective of yom. What you can do with that is very simple. Whether you are on RavCav and you buy it in advance, or you're on one of the 4 apps and it's done automatically for you, you just keep traveling. And so long as you're in a given distance, and we'll look at the map in a little second to see what those distances are, you are automatically given a day pass if you're on the apps, or you pay in advance for the day pass. That is a form of a contract. So for example, if I was traveling between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem on a RavCav, I can buy a chozeh chofshi yomi, a day pass contract that entitles me to 24 hours it's not 24 hours, i.e. overnight, it's in one calendar day, to travel between those 2 places. It's a great deal. Okay. Likewise, another chozeh is a chofshi chodshi. If I'm traveling for work, if I'm going to a place on a regular basis, I can buy a monthly pass, and the monthly pass saves even more money if I'm constantly traveling from one place to another, even on multiple modes of transportation. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then finally, there's one called the Chofshi Artzi. This is relatively new, where you get a countrywide monthly pass, where basically, with the exception of Eilat and a few other places, you can travel the entirety of the country on one pass all month for a set flat fee. Okay. To understand those contracts and those fees and things like that, we need to get through some vocabulary first. It's only a few words. Ezor ta'arif. Ezor is a region. Tariff is a word that comes to us from Arabic, and we have it even in English. Tariff is a tariff, just like it sounds in Hebrew. Tariff is a tariff, the fee. Okay, so Azol Tariff is the fee, regional fee. You'll see what that means in a second. Melchak is a distance, and it's measured in kilometer in England, in Israel, because we go through the metric system. Abbreviated kuf mem. Me'al means above. Let's look at what I'm talking about. There we go. This is the latest fare map in Israel. Okay, and as you see here, it goes through the words we just discussed. First off, at the top, Azol Tarif, right? The region that we're talking about. Azol Tarif, the fare region we're discussing. Melchak, we're going from right to left here at the top. Melchak, distance. Nisia bodedet, right? That one time, a lone travel. And then it's split between autobus and rakevet, bus and train. Chofshi yomi, day pass, autobus or rakevet and autobus, if you're taking a combined train and bus ride. Chofshi artsi, that monthly all-country pass. And then finally, Chofshi artsi, that monthly all-country pass with the train included. What you're going to notice, if you haven't figured out already, the train is a little bit more for some of these passes. So let's look at an example. Sahov. Sahov, these Ezore Tarif, the plural, these tariff zones are not static, meaning they're relative to where you are. What does that mean? If I'm in the yellow zone, meaning I'm only traveling within 15 kilometers of where I start my journey. So if I get in on Tel Aviv and I'm going as far as, let's say, Ramat Gan or Givatayim, or any of the immediate cities around me, I'm still in Sahov, which means that an autobus single bus ride is 6 shekel for a regular fee without all the discounts. The train is 9.5 shekel. If I buy a daily pass, meaning I'm going multiple times or multiple modes of transportation within that same region, for the whole day, it's 13 shekel. So automatically, if one bus ride is 6 shekel, right? The moment I ride it 3 times, it already pays off, because 6 times 3, 18. The daily pass is 13. Got it? That's how it works. And the combined train and bus is 19 shekel, right? So all you have to do, combine 9.5 and 6, 15.5, add one more half a even bus ride to that, it's already paid itself off. Great deal. Okay. And then so forth. Okay, it keeps going as that. So Yarok would be the next line. Again, these terms aren't static, so you need to know how far you are going, kilometer-wise, to know how much you're going to pay. So for example, those of you who are going from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, or from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, are going to be in the Tchelet and Kachol categories, right? So the combined Chofshi Yomi, I believe now is actually the Tchelet, which means that it's 39 shekel. Great, that pays itself off well, because why? One, if let's say you're taking the bus from my apartment to the train station, that's 6 shekel. The train is 25 shekel, so already we're at 31 shekel. And I take another train, so another bus, excuse me, so the 31 plus 6 is 37, right? Where you're already seeing it's getting close enough to 39, you're actually going to go over 39 very quickly to go back and forth. Okay, and so forth. You'll need to know the total distance between where you're going to where you are. That's how it's calculated. And you see here, there's a couple other notes at the bottom. First off, the first one says, under a single bus line, that you get umekablim umekablot 90 dakot shel ma'avar chofshi benesiot ad 15 kilometer. What does that translate to? Let's say you get on a bus and you get off a bus. You go to meet a friend for a coffee, you're doing some errands, and you get back on the bus within 90 minutes, going within 15 kilometers. So you're still in that Sahov, that yellow band. The next ride is free. right? It's like a free bus transfer because it is a free bus transfer. You still have to letakef, validate your ticket, but you'll see if you use one of the apps, for example, it'll say it's already paid. So it'll say 0 shekel in what you have to pay. Okay. The other thing it says here at the bottom of that asterisk, התעריף כולל גם נסיעה ברכבת קלה, במטרונית, ברכבלית ובכרמלית. Okay, that single bus ride, whether it's 6 shekel, 12.5, and so forth, also includes the light rails, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv metro area included, the metronit in Haifa, and the other two in Haifa, the Rakavlit and the Carmelit. Okay. And as you see here under Chofshi Yomi, it says, V'nos'im or nos'ot, depending on your gender, kama sherotzim, be'oto ha'merchak kol hayom. You can travel as much as you like in that same distance all day long. And the same thing here for the monthly pass, V'nos'im lelo hagbala kol hachodesh. You can travel without any limits all month long. We'll send this to you as well. This is how you can calculate on your own. But again, if you use one of the 4 apps that we've listed here, or you use the Ravkav and top it up ahead of time, and when you go in the app, you'll see all of those there. You don't have to worry about calculating. It'll give you the exact price. It'll put in your origin and destination. It'll tell you exactly how much it is. Okay, before I break for questions, I want to get through a few more words, important expressions, and then answer questions, and then talk about next week's class. So first off, a ticket is a kartis. You need to know that word because you do need to know the word pakach. Pakach is an inspector, whether that's on a bus or train or anywhere in the country. It is important that you have your ticket on you at all time, even if there isn't a person physically checking your ticket upon entering a station or a vehicle. You need to keep it on you at all times, because if you don't have it on you, you can be fined a significant amount of money. And so you're going to hear a pakach oftentimes randomly come on the vehicle, the bus, the train, and so forth, and they're going to ask, kartis bevakasha, right? Ticket, please. Or they'll say it in the plural because they're speaking to everyone, kartisim bevakasha, tickets, please. And he's going to want to verify that you paid for your ticket, your ride. So if you have the app, you'll need the QR code open on your screen. If you have a physical card that you bought a paper ticket, you'll need to present that. If you have a Ravkav, you'll need to give it to them and they'll scan it on their device. Okay, so very important when you see the person coming around and everyone starts scurrying around in their bags to see if they still have their stub. Kartis bevakasha. האוטובוס הזה מגיע לבlank. Does this bus go to so-and-so? Right, so let's say you get to a bus station, or even asking the bus driver, האוטובוס הזה מגיע ל... Does this bus, האוטובוס הזה, מגיע? The verb להגיע in Hebrew literally means to arrive, but this is the verb that we use in everyday Hebrew to mean to go somewhere, right? Literally, does this bus arrive at? Okay, but this is how we phrase it in Hebrew. האוטובוס הזה מגיע ל... blah, 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 right? To ask, to make sure that you have the right line to where you need to go. Whether or not you use Google Maps, by the way, you should use Google Maps or any of the apps because they have a trip planner built in them. האוטובוס כבר יצא. Let's say you get to a bus station, you're not sure if you missed it already because the Google Maps or one of the apps told you it was coming in 3 minutes. You haven't seen it. You're afraid that it may have already left. So you can ask the other people who are waiting there, האוטובוס כבר יצא. Did the bus already leave? Equally important, let's say you're in an area you're not familiar with or you're visiting or whatever it may be. איפה יש תחנת blank באזור? Why is it tachanat and not tachana? First off, the word tachana means station. Okay, so in this context, you're already learning a new word, station. It's tachanat because we're talking about a compound noun. So whether we say איפה יש תחנת רכבת באזור, where is there a train station nearby? איפה יש תחנת אוטובוס nearby? The point is that both of those words, station, tachana, and the vehicle itself, autobus, rakevet, rakevet kala, are both nouns. And just like in English, putting two nouns together creates a compound noun, a new noun, a new meaning altogether. But in Hebrew, you need to change the beginning of the first word in that series To make it clear, you're talking about two nouns. In this case, the hey at the end of tachana becomes a taf, tachanat autobus, tachanat rakevet. Okay, where is there a bus station or train station nearby? In this area, ba'izol. Matai ha-blank ha'acharon or achona? When is the last bus or train, whatever it is? So if it's a bus, which is male, masculine, matai ha-autobus ha'acharon? Train, matai ha-rakevet ha'achona? Okay, when is the last one that leaves the station? Equally important is two things you definitely need to know when you're traveling on public transportation, particularly on buses. If you need to get the driver's attention, like for example, you've pressed the button to stop and to get off the bus, and the bus driver either hasn't stopped or isn't opening your bus on one of those buses with multiple doors, you can either scream, Hadelet ha'achorit, literally the rear door, or like most Israelis do, they scream driver. Now, you don't normally say driver to get the driver's attention elsewhere in the world. Israel, it's specifically, you're going to scream it because it sounds like what you're doing, which is nagging or getting their attention. Because when you scream driver in Hebrew, it's a very jarring sound. The word is nahag, but the way you're going to say it, and hold on to your ears if you're not accustomed to this, is nag. You've heard that probably before, right? Or you've tried to do that before. The hey basically goes silent, and it's just sort of a pause. It's sort of a light breath in between the first and last letters. And you really want to put some emphasis in it because there's other people in the bus. It's going fast. There's all sorts of distractions. You need to get their attention fast. Nag. And then if you really need to follow it up, hadelet ha'achorit, the rear door. Okay, very important. I'll put in the transliteration before we send this out. Finally, if you are riding in an intercity bus, meaning from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv or vice versa or anywhere else, and you have baggage or luggage in the body of the bus, first off, that's called the ta hamitan, is the baggage hold. Ta is a cell, mitan is cargo. Okay, so if you want to say to the driver, whether because you need to put something on or take something off, אפשר לפתוח את תא המטען, can you open the baggage hold? אפשר לפתוח את תא המטען. The other word we use for the trunk, as in a car, is bagage, coming from baggage. But you can say, especially for a bus, אפשר לפתוח את תא המטען. You're going to say this obviously to the driver. Okay, very practical, very basic, but equally important no matter if you've traveled in Israel before or this is your first time coming up, how to get around on public transportation. Let's answer some questions in the time we have remaining, and then I'll talk to you about this week's conversation class and next week's Cafe Oleh class. Q&A. Is the light rail the equivalent of a tram in the UK? I'm going to say short answer, yes. The light rail, as of now in Israel, goes above ground and underground. It is not a subway. It is a light rail, so let's call it a tram. Yes. Can you discuss the concept of negotiating the fare with cab drivers? Great question. So first off, yes, I did not talk about cabs in the sense of the app. The most popular app in Israel for that is Get. There are other taxi fare apps in Israel, but Get is the most popular where you can pay by credit card. What's important about Israel with cabs is as follows. Even though cab drivers can allow payment by credit cards in the cab, if you hail one on the street, most of the time they do not allow it. It affords a very uncomfortable situation if you think you can pay by credit card and all of a sudden they tell you don't. So first off, if you're going to hail a cab on the street without the use of an app, you need to have cash. Second, the law in Israel is as follows. If you demand the moneh, the meter, they have to comply. If they don't comply, you can get out and you're not charged. You can also negotiate, but that you need to negotiate knowing the fare in advance or what the average fare is. There are tables online to see the average price between cities in Israel. I didn't go into that just because of time that we have. You do not have to negotiate if you don't want to. It can either be im hamuneh, using the meter, or you use get. Get will also, by the way, give you the option of a flat rate or using the meter. Either one, if you say so, that's what it has to be. If the driver refuses, you are not charged. Very important. Someone is asking kal, as in rakevet kala means light. Remember, we've talked about this in Israel, in Hebrew, folks. Spelling is destiny in Israel, in Hebrew, excuse me. Kal is the adjective with a kuf. Kal, kala, kalim, kalot. This means light or easy. This is not the word for bride, folks. That is with a kaf. Even though kaf and kuf sound similar in modern Hebrew, they are not the same spelling. They are different letters, and thus they are considered entirely different words. You have to spell completely correct in Hebrew. You cannot swap one letter for another just because they sound alike in modern Hebrew. Very important lesson we've talked about before. Could links to bus schedules, especially for the non-Egged bus lines in the periphery, be given to us? Folks, Google Maps is an amazing thing. Even in Israel, with all of its technological difficulties, everything is synced with Google Maps, as well as with those 4 apps, and all 4 apps at least Move On and the car apps come in English. Okay, so you can use any of those, use it in English, even though I obviously want you to practice your Hebrew, and you'll be fine. So whether you are in the center of the country or the north or the south, they all work and they're all updated, especially the apps that allow you to pay. Do you know if I can take my dog on public transportation? I've gotten many different answers. The standard law is a dog has to be muzzled before it can go on public transportation, regardless of the size of the dog. There are some forms that won't allow you, but yes, as long as the dog is muzzled, you should be okay. Don't hold me to that, though. I've answered a bunch of these. Can you discuss what to do? The Ravkav is not recognized by the sensor on the bus or the light rail. You need to get your Ravkav checked. It is not the fault of the machine. It is the problem with your card, unless it says very clearly on the machine, it's not reading any card. And if no one's getting their card read, you get a free ride. Don't worry about it. But if your card is not working and other people's are, you need to get it checked ASAP. You can get into a lot of trouble if it's faulty or the inspector comes and you can't figure out why it's not working. Discounts for non-citizens. Last time I was there, they said not for foreigners. Correct. It is only for Israeli citizens because you have to get that verified. And equally important, it's only on those profiles, whether it's the Ravkav, the physical card, or the online ones that are verified with an Israeli phone number. So you have to use it like that. Unfortunately, it's only for Israeli citizens. How can you get around in Israel if you are on a 10-day pilot trip from abroad? Depends on your itinerary. You could be renting a car depending on where you're going. You could maybe only be on public transportation. The point, though, is make an itinerary first and then plan accordingly. That's probably the best way to think about it. What is the story with the transfer within 90 minutes of the origin time? I live in Tel Aviv. I live just south of Rothschild. If I go from my nearest bus stop to, let's say, Dizengoff Center, and then from Dizengoff Center, I need to get to the port in the north of the city, right? The first trip will cost 6 shekel. The trip after that, so long as I make it within the first 90 minutes of when I got on the first bus, is free. The free bus transfer. Okay. Someone's asking me a question about Jewish law, which I can't answer for you. But just someone is asking if you are Shabbat observant, are you allowed to hop on one of these free Shabbat buses? You should consult your rabbi. But I will tell you that those buses run free. They are operated by non-Jews. Okay. Can a non-citizen use a Lavkav? Yes, you can purchase a Lavkav. You just won't be able to get the discounts afforded to certain demographics. You can still get the day pass, even the monthly pass. You will need to register the card, however, to do that. But yes, absolutely, you can get those types of discounts. Do trains and buses operate all night? If so, what are the cutoff times? Again, Google Maps is your friend. Check the times on there. You can also check all the individual ones. I can tell you that the train, depending on where you are in the country, runs at least once an hour through the night. And those night lines are also important. But all you have to do is plan a trip through an app or Google Maps. You'll see when the times are. Is the app enough, or do you need a physical Lavkav? If you use one of those 4 apps, it's enough, because to use those apps, you need to put in your credit card information. And every time you use the app to scan, it'll tally up into an account. And at the end of the month, it will send you a bill. Someone is asking about a specific community in Israel, folks. I am not the Ministry of Transportation. I would love to know everything around the world, but I don't. And so if you're asking me about a specific neighborhood or a specific town, this is a country of 9.5 million people. I can't help you. I'm sorry. You should ask a neighbor, get to know your neighbors, get to know your local municipality to find out where bus times are and the schedule. But please don't ask me about individual communities. I'm smart. I'm not that smart. Do you have a preference between Lav and Move It? I use Hop On. For many years, I used the Lavkav. I'm a firm, devout convert to Hop On because it's one of the apps where all you have to do is scan it. It automatically tallies any discounts for you, and it automatically sends you a bill at the end of the month. It's just really easy, and it has that built-in trip planner. It's in English also, and that trip planner is often more up to date than Google Maps is, and it's also combined, meaning it uses the light rail, the train, all the other systems, and the regular train. It's a really good app, I gotta say. Why doesn't Google Maps work near Haifa? If you have not been keeping up with the news for the last 11 months, one of the means by which Israel keeps its deterrence in the north is by scrambling the GPS. And it can do so on a national level. It did so nationwide at the start of the war. Now it's primarily in the north, where most of the attacks are coming in from Hezbollah. So if you go up to a certain point in the north, all GPS is scrambled. And you're going to need to plan in advance using other systems like Google Maps from your computer or from another place in order to plan accordingly. Okay. To confirm, the free transfer is only bus to bus, not bus to train. Absolutely. Again, the bus is not, the train is a different price than the bus. You can go from bus to bus, not bus to train for free. Okay. On the bus schedule at the pickup station, sometimes it says the line number, then a down arrow, while other lines have the time arriving. What is meant by the down arrow simply means it's arriving. Okay. It means the bus is arriving. So stay there. The number means how many minutes it's away. The arrow means it's coming immediately. Hop On is a national app, folks. It's an app. It's not anything else. Hop On. Go to Google Store or Apple Store. You can download it already. Hop On is a great app. All the other 3 are as well. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. Unfortunately, we have to go. Wednesday's class, if you're joining us for Cafe Oleh Conversations, and highly recommend all of you do, this is a great opportunity to practice your spoken Hebrew as well as listening skills, where you're going to be broken down into groups based on your current proficiency level. This week, we're going to continue last week's Cafe Oleh Monday class, and we're going to be practicing using the article et. You're going to get some conversation prompts and starters, but you're going to be practicing how to use et before a direct and definite object. It's a really important lesson. Next week's class is also a request from participants like yourself, where we are going to be going through terms and things to know, economics, and just basic value and consumer awareness when it comes to grooming products, men and women, children, everything. We're going to go through as many of them as possible for Monday. Until next week, until Wednesday's class, and until next week's Monday's class, feel free to be in touch with us by email, hebrew@nbn.org.il. Until we see you this Wednesday or next Monday. Also stay tuned to your email for the for a recording of this class, as well as the vocabulary sheet that comes with it. Until we see you again, toda rabah, thank you all, and lehitraot. See you all very soon.